So as you guys see right here, it says ISO TC307's role in this liaison is vital. What is this liaison? And like it says, it is charged with the task of translating the needs and specifications of DLT into the standardized formats. We talked about this numerous times for, well over a year, okay? Basically speaking, these standardizations from DLT that can seamlessly integrate with ISO 222 messaging. Now, some people are going to state, well, then why have both? You got to understand the bigger picture of things. You do need both to a sense. Now, this translation is key to creating a unified ledger. Now, we've been talking a lot about this unified ledger. We've been sharing a lot of content about RLN, how JP Morgan's part of the mix, Citi's part of the mix. A lot of these big players are part of this mix because it's just that, guys, creating a unified ledger. And last I checked, that sounds really, really good to me. I'm all bullish on that one. And basically, this unified ledger can effortlessly coexist with legacy financial infrastructure. Awesome. How so? Well, there's multiple examples, right? We talked about, the Bank of International Settlements, talked about, for instance, Project Rosalind, Bank of England, all that stuff. But I want to show you another example that we shared last time. Here it is. Here's Securitize. Now, you did see the last time that we covered this, got honorable mention. You can verify this yourself by going to securitize.io, and it says, plain as day, through partnership with Securitize, investors can gain tokenized exposure to KKR's latest healthcare-focused growth equity fund. Now, we understand how big of a proponent Laura Verdian is in regards to Quant Network, right? She's married, obviously, to the big honcho, Mr. Gilbert Verdian, but she really stands out when it comes to healthcare. Quant naturally stands out when it comes to tokenized projects, when it comes to healthcare. But, kind of like back to what Will Fix was saying, the things that run in the background. Quant Network allows quite a few things to run in the background, and especially when it comes to healthcare, because let's face it, even getting healthcare records, last time I would try to get mine, it took me 3 weeks. Imagine going from 3 weeks to having something absolutely 100% verifiable, immutable, as the saying goes, trustless, no problems, right? Instantaneous. We want all those things, right? Time is money, and especially when it comes to healthcare. So this thing, KKR, right? Lower investment minimums and greater potential for liquidity. Why am I pointing this out? Well, if anything, I want to share why. And we have gone ahead and fast forwarded to this particular part of this unlisted video. So you may not have even seen this. Quant Gilbert Verdian's stance on interoperability and the benefits of digital assets. This is 11 months ago. Yes, it was from Sibos. Why am I citing Sibos again? I'll tell you why I'm citing Sibos again. And I thank Mr. Quant Papa for citing it again. The main reason why we're citing it again is because what you're going to hear here soon, back to that reference of KKR. Who the heck is this? Pay attention. Here we go.
I mean, once you get to that stage, what's it going to mean for financial institutions, customers, whether it's on the corporate side or on the retail side? Once we have this ubiquity across all platforms, what's it going to mean?
It means customers and businesses can actually access new assets which they couldn't before. You had to be a fund, you had to be an institution, and we're seeing that walled garden being broken down, which is amazing, because traditional funds can easily digitize and tokenize, and we're seeing that with KKR. They just opened up one of their huge health funds, in the billions, and they're getting people to access it for the first time, which couldn't have access to that before. And that means more customers, more value for them. But it also means consumers and businesses can do things they just didn't have the opportunity to do. So again, taking an illiquid asset, tokenizing it as a digital asset, using that as collateral in a loan in a new way, it's really transforming financial services. And this time just doesn't happen often. It's every 30 years we get to this transformational phase of FS.
Amazing. Well, if we divide that by 10, it's been 3 years since the last physical Cybos. And I've got to ask, what's caught your eye? What trends have made you go, that's interesting?
I think what's been exciting for this Cybos, we were at 2019, is top of mind. Everyone is talking about CBDCs and digital assets. And they weren't, not many years ago, it was only 3 years ago that they didn't do that. And what's changed is the regulation has allowed institutions to explore and implement the technology. But what we've seen is everyone has a friction point and a barrier of interoperability. How do we solve interoperability? How do we make this work within our existing core banking system, with our capital market system? And that's something we solved in 2018. So we're quite ahead of the market to be able to implement interoperable blockchain solutions to coexist with their existing solutions. And that work we're actually doing with large banks, central banks, and really testing, instead of just talking about it, testing CBDCs.
Absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
That's brilliant.
So right from, excuse me, hit pause on that. So bottom line is this, guys, right from the get-go, like within 15 seconds, literally mentions KKR, right? Why would they pull this? Why, you never know. Could be NDAs. I don't know. But whatever the case be, that was unlisted. Now check this out. Now, who exactly is KKR? Well, they are a pretty big outfit, to say the least. Here's their site. They specialize, like, for instance, in private equity, quite a few other things. And in the process of doing so, let me show you. So for one, 5 decades of helping companies unlock their potential. Look at this. Globally local. That sounds weird. That sounds like an oxymoron, right? How can you be globally local? It says with offices in 24 cities and 17 countries around the globe, their team employs deep-rooted local expertise while also leveraging the global KKR platform to drive strong outcomes for the stakeholders. They have collaborative teamwork, all this cool stuff, right? Shared ownership. But look at this. Beyond capital, they bring an extensive network of operational capital markets, industry advisors, geopolitical, macro, and sustainability, resources, create value. Look at this. Look at their stats. 170 billion in capital invested, 100 billion capital to invest, 200 plus portfolio companies. So they really, really stand out. And getting a little bit more into this, if you're wondering how much of their worth, they're basically worth, this comes straight from Google, from stock and analysis. KKR and Co. has a market cap or net worth of 63.41 billion as of November 1st, yesterday. So that's a recent report. That's pretty cool, right? Because you guys do want something a little bit more recent. His market cap, were you aware, has increased by 59.13% in 1 year alone. Now, the Quant connection, that's pretty big. And that's worth sharing, is it not? Now, I want to jump back to what we have in regards to this outline. So some people have asked, when it comes to Quant, about being the core API layer. It gets brought up all the time. Some people want examples about some of this stuff. Let me give you some flat out examples. This is good stuff if you're just tuning in. Because plain as day, you see how this is broke down, right? We talk about interoperability all day long, but can you have a visualization in regards to a core API layer? And the answer is yes. So look what it says here. Central bank ledger, that layer. Have you ever been able to visualize that exact ledger, layer? Talking too ahead of myself sometimes. Simulation of account-based ledger, smart contracts. Where does it go? All right. You do see how it goes to the ledger API layer. Who is at the root core of that layer? Well, it's Quant Network. Who is standing right next to it? The CBDC API layer. Where does that, go? Well, it goes to the Rosalind Sandbox, who is also part of that. Oh, yeah, the Bank of International Settlements, who's also part of that. The Bank of England, How does it really come together? Well, we'll talk about that for a brief moment. So you have these things that are called DLT connectors. And this is where Gilbert Verdian has literally outlined. And if you're looking at these little boxes, he talks about you can't have walled gardens or silos or anything like that. If anything, you need to have these connectors. Hence why I always talk to you guys all the time about your plugs, your connects. Here's a great visualization. You have a CBDC API, you have a DLT API, and the signing of just that. Where do we have transactions? How are they signed? Who are the responder? Quant Overledger signs it all, and that's the beautiful thing of it being on the Overledger platform, right? That operating system, being blockchain agnostic. In regards to the whole thing with the Rosalind Sandbox, they come in with what's called the orchestration, even with the messages, ISO 222, right? Well, the DLT message, ISO TC 307, over to the Quant Overledger. On the far right, it's again visualizations. Virtual handshakes mean just that. It means a deal is struck, a deal is done. Service provider layers, right? You've got your debit cards, virtual handshake, basically just more of that verification. Now, giving you another example about this, what about the platform? Well, the platform obviously is done through Overledger, but the platform to integrate and test payments and banking applications, Quant sits right at the core ledger part of that through its core ledger API done through what? The Overledger platform. So you have two examples. Again, picture what happened on the previous slide. DLT1, DLT2, Quant Overledger, CBDC APIs, the ability to interoperate with existing payment systems. Well, we always talk about ISO 222. And some people have stated, well, why do we need ISO 222 if Quant it has its own standard? It works with those standards as well. That's a beautiful thing about it. Payment systems, the participant network. Who's the participant network? Well, again, that Rosalind Sandbox, okay? So you have, for instance, APIs, you have DLT, you have ISO 222 on both particular systems, payment systems and the participating network systems. What about some of this other stuff? Well, as you can see, Project Rosalind, the BIS, Bank of England, just like I mentioned, kicks it on over to commercial banks, institutions, fintechs, PIPs, use case, prototyping, all works interoperable 100%. Now, let's show you just a tad bit more in regards to this. So here's another beautiful example. I love that Quant Papa got us this information. So on the far right, you do see, for instance, the server provider layer. We'll kick it more into what we have on the left, but you see some big, big names here. Barclays, MasterCard, Amazon, Bank of Canada, Banque du Canada, right? That'd probably be more towards the Quebec side of things with Montreal and so on, because they speak French Canadian over there. Revolut, Worldline, BNY Mellon, right? So some big, big names. Now, back to the whole topic of the central bank ledger layer. You have a simulation of account-based ledger. Proxy contract kicks it over to that ledger. For what? That would be on the Quant side of things. On the central bank side of things, the far left, look what it mentions. You have data storage, those accounts, right, all contained on there, even on legacy systems, because those legacy systems are not going to go away yet. You understand there's going to be a transition of how that all happens, but they have to be stored somewhere. So again, on what? The Rosalind Sandbox to kick it over through the Overledger, and then Overledger digitalizes it, right? I'm just giving you that visualization. And look what it mentions. Co-contracts, smart contract functions to kick it over to what? The orange area. The orange area represents the Overledger. It's beautiful. If anything, it's super quick. So you have all this going on. Transaction signing, responder keys. It's all broken down. What about to the core API layer? Again, you see it right through the sandbox and so on. So both the CBDC layer, Quant's Overledger API layer, kicking over to the Rosalind Sandbox, and then boom, all the way over to the service provider layers that we just mentioned. Your Barclays, your Amazons, all that stuff. Yeah, Amazon. Does that sound crazy? And of course, MasterCard. Why wouldn't it be MasterCard? Think about Gilbert Verdian, right, with Vocal Link to that particular connection of MasterCard. That has always existed and it always will. Getting more into this, I want to share this with you. It's a little bit more recent news. And if anything, we're going to take a pause and show you a video. This video was originally listed a week ago on the Overledger, or I should say Quant Network site. It has been taken down for whatever reason. Last I see, this doesn't violate any type of thing. I have to take it down myself. So we're going to go ahead and show you this. And maybe you've seen it, but wherever the case be, it was only available for a couple days. So I want to share this with you guys. If you appreciate the Quant coverage, please smash the like. Here we go.
There's been a lot of theory done on CBDCs, there's been a lot of economic analysis, but this was the first time they're actually testing it with real applications, real payments, and real use cases that represented what people and businesses use. Project Rosalind's objectives were for the Bank of England and the Bank of International Settlement to understand what a CBDC means for banks, institutions, payment organizations, and fintechs in a real-world setting. We actually created a new form of money. We were able to create a new form of escrow, a digital escrow. We saw firsthand participants like the Central Bank of Canada, Amazon, Barclays, MasterCard use this innovative escrow technology that we built to create new types of payments and new types of flows.
What made Project Rosalind so successful was that it was very, very driven by end users. They engaged the API users and some big folks and some small folks early on and continuously throughout the project, and they still are doing. And that focus on what is it that end users want, why will they find it useful, actually is a massive contributor to project success, right? It means there's a reason for the project to happen, which is not the case with all blockchain projects. It was very, very iterative. Every week we were coming up with new requirements. Every week we were producing new demos, and we had really strong participation from the Bank of England, from BIS, from everybody. And the project was like an absolute dream, right? It was the best project we've worked on.
It was truly agile. We're receiving requirements, shipping a build, receiving feedback from users within a 2-week span. It's something that you don't get very often in projects or products, that you're getting user feedback within 2 weeks of getting the requirements. So that by itself was exhilarating.
Quant's technology for Project Rosalind essentially provides the technological foundation of the entire project itself.
A big part of our contribution to that was Overledger, our technology, and that made everything much smoother and much faster. If we'd been building against a regular blockchain and integrating with it directly, we would never have been able to do it in 6 months.
The whole idea of Project Rosalind was to create a whole bunch of APIs that businesses and banks could use to interact with CBDCs. Those APIs actually talk to Overledger and interact with the blockchain via Overledger. So we literally provide the technological foundation for interacting with blockchain.
The other area where we contributed a lot was in our smart contract expertise. We built the smart contracts for this, which are quite complex central bank digital currency smart contracts, and that's a kind of a credit to the folks on our tech team. The main challenges in Project Rosalind were around kind of defining exactly what do we mean by a CBDC, right? So there's a lot of different ways that you can do that. It could be decentralized, it could be centralized, and so some of those big decisions needed to happen quite early on. The other challenge that we had was around offline payments. Offline payments are just technically difficult, and it took us longer than we expected to work through how that works. We were successful in the end, but it took a while.
We had so many different requirements to cater for, and taking those diverse requirements and diverse use cases and boiling that down into a simple set of APIs that would suit everyone was a design challenge in itself. To then take those APIs and build them rapidly was a fun challenge, but a challenge nonetheless.
The learning outcomes from this project for us have been really quite transformative. So there was the big thing with retail CBDC is, so what, right? What's the point of this? And Project Rosalind came up with some really, really good answers to that, which were kind of collaborative through the whole process. But actually they've given us a lot of clarity in terms of how that should work, and that's affected some of our other propositions.
We have kind of laid the groundwork for how Quant wants to do projects going forward. There was a huge amount of collaboration, and it was an absolute joy to work with everybody. Plus, internally within our teams, It challenged us to work quicker and collaborate internally within Quant as well. So honestly, it was a joy.
All right. We're almost done in regards to the coverage, but that backed up everything that you saw presented earlier, right? Nice little visualization. Here's a little bit more in regards to some recent news, and we'll get into that here in a bit as well. So again, from the Quant network, let's try to pull this up. All right. And yeah, it's actually on the previous tab. Sorry about that. All right, here we go. So this right here, it talks about the Hong Kong Monetary Authority. And on this particular one, it states that they are the HKMA. They have published the results of its first phase of central bank digital currency pilots involving 16 institutions. It found the most added value from various programmable payment applications, as well as benefits for tokenization and atomic settlement. Of course, it says you can learn more about their work on CBDCs at that particular link. But yeah, Hong Kong retail CBDC pilots. So earlier we were talking about XRP, right, in regards to some of the pilots and so on. And, you know, some great examples that we basically saw. Now you see this for Quant, right? Big deal. Tokenization, atomic settlement, key benefits. Let's take you over to the Quant Network's Twitter posting. This happened on October 30th, so, you know, pretty recent, right? Like I say, the Hong Kong Monetary Authority has published the results of its first phase of CBDC pilots. It found the most added value from various programmable payment applications as well as benefits, like we just said. So bottom line is you're now seeing yet another example of how this all comes together. And if anything, I'm going to take you to this right here, some key highlights in regards to the HKMA. Like it says, the HKMA is also wary about programmable payments versus programmable money. In the latter case, money can only be used for specific purposes. I mean, to a sense, true. If this is done on issuance, it conflicts with the singleness of money. Overall, the 6 areas explored during the CBDC pilots were full-fledged payments, programmable payments, offline payments, tokenized deposits, settlement instructions for Web3, settlements of tokenized assets. But here's the key highlight. The paper considered the pros and cons of using DLT for retail CBDC. The primary reservation is around scalability. That always gets brought up all the time, scalability. However, the HKMA sees opportunities with DLT for better future interoperability and ease of development. So, cool stuff. At least one additional pilot phase is planned. We referenced that on the previous slides. It will delve deeper into some of the phase 1 use cases and add, of course, new ones. And that's a good thing. It also wants to explore integration with conventional payments, right? The old systems and so on, right? Not leaving it behind, but exploring it. And how the EHKD can complement tokenized deposits. So, if anything, that's going to conclude our Quant coverage. Thought I would share that with you guys. You know, it's kind of interesting to see the Quant network pull this information for whatever reason, but it's still out there, and glad to bring it to you guys. Let me know what you guys think in regards to all the recent news. For Quant, let's face it, in the last couple of weeks, we've seen the price go from roughly $85, $86 to 106. There's been a little bit of a pullback and so on. Right, people take profits. That's just the way it goes. But always interesting to see what Quant is doing. I think Quant is absolutely going to be huge within the next few years. And if anything, I will continue to DCA into it.